these are your 4, 5B notes. We're going to now solve the quadratic equations by completing the square. So we're going to take some of the concepts that we learned yesterday and apply them today. So one of the wonderful things about completing the square is that it's systematic. There is like a 4-step process, and then from there, so it's very systematic. You get into a routine, a little different than factoring, where it's all over the place. This is a routine. So one of the things you're going to do is you're going to make everybody perfect. So we're going to move out the imperfect c to the other side of the equation. And then you're going to create or calculate the perfect c. And you're allowed to bring in numbers to both sides of the equation. So once we calculate that value, we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. As long as we follow the rules of algebra, that's perfectly okay. Now that we have a perfect c in there, we formed a perfect square trinomial. That's the whole purpose of step 2. So once we have a perfect c in place, we're going to factor that new perfect square trinomial, and then we simply use the square root property. So we already practiced using the square root property once we had a perfect square trinomial. So the only difference today is that we're going to make it perfect first. So in this particular case, I don't even have a trinomial. I don't have an imperfect c. It just needs a c value. So I'm going to simply calculate that, and that involves this 6. So my c value is going to be equal to 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Put parentheses around it and square it, and it equals 9. I want to see that work every single time because it's important. It helps us later on. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides of my equation. X squared plus 6x plus my new value of 9 is equal to 16. But if I add 9 to one side, I have to add 9 to the other side. So I just underlined it to have it pointed out there. Both sides of my equation increased by 9. So what that did is it created a perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side. We practiced that. We set ourselves up. There's a reason for that. That's why we added 9, so that when we factor this, it's pretty brainless. We made it really easy to factor. I've made it perfect. And so the first, the quantity becomes x plus 3 squared. And then the right-hand side, 16 plus 9, makes 25. And so now we're right back to where we were yesterday. Let's take the square root of both sides. The square and the square root cancel. X plus 3 is equal to positive and negative 5, because the square root of 25 is positive 5 and negative 5. I'm going to subtract 3 from both of those. So x is equal to negative 3 plus 5 and negative 3 minus 5. And so negative 3 plus 5 is 2, and negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. So I have my solutions. My solutions are 2 and negative 8. Remember, anytime they ask us to solve, you're looking for the values of the variable that make that statement true. I can always check my answers by plugging them into the original. So if I square 2, I get 4. 4 plus 12 is 16. And then if I check negative 8, negative 8 squared is positive 64. Positive 64 take away 48 is also 16. So I can always check to see if I'm doing it correct. Let's try another one. So here's an example where there's a trinomial, but it's not a perfect square trinomial because the 1 is not a perfect c value that we need. So I'm going to start off by moving that over. X squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave room for my new c is equal to negative 1 plus room for my new c. So I got it all set up. I moved out old c, bring in new perfect c. To get my c value, I take my b value, which is negative 4, take half of it, which is negative 2, square it, and it equals 4. So I'm going to add 4 as my new c value on both sides. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. That creates a perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side. So I know it's going to factor to x minus 2 squared. And on the right-hand side, I'm going to simplify negative 1 plus 4 and make it 3. Now we take the square root of both sides. After we factored it, we have a perfect square. The square and the square root cancel. X minus 2 is equal to a positive and a negative square root of 3. I can't do anything with the square root of 3, so leave it. Add 2 to both sides, and your solution is x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. So you can write your answer just that way, 2 plus the square root of 3, 2 minus the square root of 3, or you can keep it as the combo. It's hitting the x-axis in 2 spots. They're just icky, irrational spots. All right? So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I want you to describe what the first step to solve by completing the square is. Look back through your notes. What's the very first thing you need to do? And then I need you to solve that trinomial by completing the square. Good luck.